Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Laura, you are, let me see. I want to get this right because acronyms in the Army.
Correct.
Okay, so you are the Soldier and Family Assistance Program Manager at USARAC, or United States Army Recruiting Command.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, for 3rd Brigade.
For 3rd Brigade.
Yes.
And anything discussed in this podcast is not a direct view of the DoD. I always have to get that in because you just never know.
Right. I have a lot of personal aspect to share as well, so it's good.
Oh, yeah, no, it's all good. So, I mean, we connected because you run into a lot of issues with soldiers and their families in rural America, which is something, your perspective was really interesting because yes, active duty, like reserve, National Guard, that's what I think about, but I didn't think about recruiters and their families. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. So just like when you think about the reserves and the National Guard and veterans being out in rural America, our recruiters who are actually active duty soldiers and families are out there in small town America as well, sometimes hours and hours away from installations and all of the supports and services that are their entitlements, essentially everything that they would have access to if they were on or near an installation. The Army sends them into recruiting duty and they are no longer anywhere near those things. So they face a lot of the same situations that the veterans do, even while they're still on active duty.
Yeah, I mean, we're spoiled. So like here we're at Bragg. And if we have an issue with something, we just go into Bragg. We get all of our health care at Womack. I get seen off post, but it's easy. It's easy just to go on there, pick up your prescription. You know what you need to do. You know which building you need to go to. So how do they sort of navigate that?
There's definitely... there's a huge learning curve in that they have been familiar with installation-based life for however many years they've been in the Army up to the point that they come into recruiting. So while they're at recruiting school, we catch them, we tell them some of these things, but it's so much information overload that it's kind of just trial by fire once they get out there. But we do have people in place to kind of mirror those things. Part of my position, so I'm at the brigade level. In my brigade, 3rd Brigade, there are also 8 battalions, and at the battalion there's another one of me, a Soldier and Family Assistance Program Manager. We call ourselves SFAs, so there's another Army acronym for you. But we are there at the battalion level to be able to let them know that they are not completely isolated from support and service. It's just going to look a little different now that they are out in those little rural, small town America areas. And so the navigation of that, to your question, can be a bit challenging at times.
Yeah, like what does healthcare look like? Like how do they? I mean, I'm just thinking of my small town in McConnellsburg, and I know that there's a recruiting office in the county over, and like we're really limited on healthcare there as small mom and pop doctors. Like one of our doctors has been practicing literally since Vietnam. Like I'm not even kidding. So what does that look like?
So it big change for them when they go out into these communities. All of their healthcare becomes civilian based rather than going to the military treatment facility on an installation or being sent right off post to a specialist, but someone who's very military and TRICARE familiar. Most of the doctors that they go to once they are out in these rural areas are not military familiar. Many of them are not really familiar with TRICARE. I know of some soldiers who are the only TRICARE patient that that doctor even sees. And so there's a learning curve for the doctors as well. But their healthcare does go to being fully driven by civilian healthcare providers and services that are, sometimes not familiar with all the processes that are required for them. And then their medical records are also not being automatically loaded into their military health system attached to their military records. So there are lots of extra steps that they then have to be explained to go through, and just a cumbersome nature to some of the things that they have to do just to maintain their continuity of care while they're out in these little small towns.
Yeah. I mean, that really adds to your mental load.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it definitely is.
I'm kind of overwhelmed just listening to it, just because my husband just left this morning to go to Fort Leavenworth for a couple months. And I was just thinking, like, wow, like my mental load has just doubled. And, we are near everything, but having to, you almost have to tell, and I've had to do this before, and not in a mean way, but like I've had to call TRICARE before and kind of tell them how to do their job or how to, and I don't, there's probably a better way to say that, but the person that you get on the other line is not always the expert. And so like I just can't imagine as that family, and then you're trying to juggle, placing your kids in school and what after school sports there are, where you need to find a pediatrician, and then it's a lot.
It is a lot. There are so many kind of extra pieces to the puzzle for all of them, for these soldiers and families. You mentioned putting kids in schools. Well, they are having to kind of look ahead to the areas where they're going to recruit, to evaluate where is going to be a good place to live, where 30 minutes on one side of the station, 45 minutes on the other. There's this huge range of space where they would be able to live and be able to commute back and forth to the station for work, and yet put their family in better areas for better schools or better childcare and those kind of things. So there's so much more that goes into it as a PCS, even in addition to, like, if you were PCSing between installations, you kind of have a one-stop shop for where you can find all the information about everything. But if you're moving to just small town America, there's this probably at least 45-minute radius around the station where it might be better to live. The rent or purchase of a home might meet your BAH a little better, because again, these areas are not military familiar. They're not basing any kind of cost of living or the rates of housing on BAH like military centric areas do. So there are so many added layers of challenge for them as they are moving into these recruiting locations.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, one of the challenges that I've heard from rural veterans is that housing is an issue. There's not many rentals available in these areas, and a lot of them don't understand how to use the VA loan or that they're eligible for it. So when they go to look, like, is that an issue? Like, our houses, here at Bragg, like, you look at a house and it's gone. Like, you've got to go and move on things. There's plenty around, but you've got to move quick because people are moving in so fast. But I imagine if you're moving to one of these rural areas, it's probably pretty hard to even find a rental.
Yes. So it is definitely one of the huge stressors as recruiters are coming out into the field. A lot of rural areas, as you mentioned, don't have a lot of rentals, and they know that they're only going to be there for a couple of years, but many of them are essentially forced, I hate to use that word, but they are kind of forced into purchasing a home in some of these areas where renting is just not the norm, for some of those areas where people just live and die like their whole lifespan in those small town areas. There are just not a lot of rentals. There are some areas that are obviously areas that are kind of college centric and things like that, but many areas where these soldiers are having to purchase homes and maybe they weren't really financially prepared for that. So then we also have financial considerations for these recruiters who are coming out. Most of the time they're coming out as E5s, potentially E6s. So, taking that into consideration, knowing that they are possibly, and many of them probably, going to encounter some financial struggles as they come into this special duty just because of the area where they are being sent is definitely another huge stressor. And then another thing that we face challenges and try to reach them with financial planning resources, personal financial counselors, and things like that. Whereas on an installation, again, they would just be able to walk into the ACS or whatever the services are for their branch. I'm familiar with Army terminology, so I know that's different in some of the other branches. But on installations, there are people that they can go to, doors that they can walk through where they can say, hey, I'm not sure how to plan financially for this. I'm going to need to buy a home. They do not have that just at hand's reach when they are going out into recruiting. So then again, we're trying to make sure that they know virtual resources that are available, or like you do for veterans, put them in contact with maybe someone, an organization that's in their community.
Yeah, and especially you go and you find maybe a civilian and you're trying to like ask them about your TSP and they have no idea what you're talking about, or how to even get into the system. And so, gosh, there's just so many different challenges to navigate. So you said, did you say they're between E5 and E6?
Generally, when they become DA, Department of the Army selected, and kind of like they're just given orders to come into recruiting, that typically happens when they're an E5 or an E6. They often get offered a promotion from E5 to E6 if they meet certain criteria as they come into recruiting, but it's kind of that baseline. Then we do have all the way up the ranks who they decide to stay in recruiting and they convert to the MOS to be a recruiter. So then we do have like E7s are typically, becoming leaders within recruiting and first sergeants, and we have company commanders and all of those as well. But across the board, the majority are E5s and E6s.
So what age is that whenever they first come in? Like, what does that family look like?
Some of them are fairly young. Say they came into the Army at 17 or 18 and they've done 7 or 8 years and are now NCOs. They are often in their early to mid 20s when they are coming into recruiting. So typically young families. So again, a lot of added pressure and strain on them from the childcare, the housing perspective, and spouse employment, especially. So, within the military, spouse employment is a huge issue, something that we're constantly working toward improving and just creating awareness of. The recruiters have an additional layer, again, peeling back all the layers of this onion that is recruiting duty. The employment there for those spouses is often more challenging because they are, again, not in a military affiliated area who knows about what military spouse life is like. So if you're in rural America where they're looking for someone to come into a position that's going to have some longevity, only being there for 2 to 3 years is not appealing to them. So our recruiting spouses face that additional challenge of these places just not having the knowledge. I use the word ignorant sometimes to kind of explain where just the whole community stands from a military position. It's not ignorance as in like the bad, stupid ignorance. It's really just they are not aware. They haven't had to experience that. It's, not part of what their mindset and knowledge holds. And so it really just creates these additional layers of stress and hardship on some of these very young families.
Yeah. And these smaller communities, I know from growing up in one, they can be a little tight-knit and hard to break through. And some of the best people ever, but
Absolutely.
they take a little bit it takes a little bit to grease the wheels there. Like, it takes a little bit to warm up. And then where are you going to do that if you don't have a community center, which a lot of small towns don't,
Right.
or regular social gatherings, which a lot of small town communities don't. It's like, how do you get that community? Because I'm always an advocate for, you need to build your own community, but that requires you doing the work. So when you're in these small towns, how do you put in the work to do it? I mean, it's another thing you have to do, but
right.
It's just another challenge for these guys living in smaller areas. I always say start at the library because if they're going to have anything, that's where they're going to have it. I mean,
yes. And like you said, they'll generally have a lot of those, even in areas where they don't have a community center. The library will almost function in that way. They'll have so many community events there. Another thing that we greatly encourage in recruiting is for them to volunteer in their community. It helps that, like you said, some of these tight knit, there's not a lot of outsiders kind of communities. You can really start building rapport and becoming part of that community by volunteering in whatever kinds of organizations that they have going on there. I know we have lots of recruiters who will like coach youth soccer teams or, go teach some what's the word? Not co-teach, but
like substitute,
like substitute teach at some of the schools in like teaching gym, because they know all the physical fitness stuff and all of that, and so they will get involved in their communities through volunteering, and it's kind of like mutually beneficial. They are building rapport, and so it works well for them from a recruiting perspective as they start to build good relationships within the community, but it's also good for them because they are building some connections as well in those areas.
Yeah, and I think, can you hear my son yelling?
A little, yeah.
Okay. At least he's happy today. I think it's really like volunteering also does a lot for the community, because what I was talking to somebody else about this weekend. I just think that we could have a healthier veteran community, especially on the outside, if more civilians understood what that military life looked like. Like, not everybody has to deploy, not everybody has to go to combat, but yet military families make a lot of sacrifices. And there's a lot of weird mental things that we go through in this life. That is just like sort of bizarre to the regular person, the 99%, right? And I just think that if we could have more of that meshing and colliding of worlds, that we could have a healthier veteran population in general, and then in that case, the active duty family would just feel a lot more supported too, because I feel generally in these areas the community really is mostly pro-military. They're very supportive. The issue I see is that they just don't know how to really support well, other than saying like, oh, just gee, we really appreciate you, which is great. But it's like maybe bring them a casserole, maybe check in on them. That they probably miss their mom.
Right. Yes. Or just their military friends. I hear the word isolated so much when I'm talking to the soldiers and families who are out in some of these very remote rural areas. They know that they're ours and they're so far away from military installations, but they even feel often separated from even the people who are in their own company. I mean, when we're talking about, say, like the UP of Michigan, and there are 8 recruiting stations in that entire area, there's over 8 hours between 2 of those stations. So if people who know kind of the breakdown of the military, so brigade, battalion, company, and then they have their recruiting stations within those companies, they can be 8 hours away from people who are in their same company. Whereas on an installation, like you would not go a day without
Hmm.
seeing the people who were in your unit, like your company for sure. And possibly even potentially your whole brigade at least once a week or something along those lines. But they are not even seeing anybody outside of their station often for months at a time. So the soldiers often feel isolated just from the camaraderie that they are familiar with. And often that's one of the reasons that they even joined the military. And it's a huge draw for retention in the military is that
Right.
connection. So then when they feel isolated, and then the families, the spouses and the kids are even more so isolated from any kids that are military familiar. The majority of our recruiting kids are the only military kids in their school. The spouses are probably the only Army spouse who is, has kids in that school, who is in that area, who would go to the library for a community event. And so there is so much benefit to them becoming ingrained in that community, even though they know that they have to leave. And I think that's one of the drawbacks, maybe one of the reasons that they often don't, is because they know that it's just gonna have to be broken up in just a couple of years. But there's truly so much benefit to it for them, for the military family, and for veterans also, but for the community in general, to be able to understand and grasp it a little more from knowing a military family. And so then they're able to do or be a little bit more than just a thank you for your service, which again, I'm not downplaying that at all. When people see your military ID and they say thank you for your service, it's very, very meaningful. But when they know more and they're educated and they feel connected to someone who is a military family, there's something that grows.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It feels better. And I know it's whenever you're moving all the time, it is so hard to want to reach out and make those deep connections because it hurts moving away from that. And that's also something that a lot of people they don't get experience with, right? Like they
Yeah.
might move once far away in their life.
Right.
Or like among the same town, but like moving I
Mhm.
remember when we moved from Fort Drum, most of my friends in Fort Drum were civilians. They had no
Mm.
military affiliation because I worked in the population. So
Mhm.
leaving there was really, really tough. And then you go to a new duty station, you're really guarded and
Mhm.
you don't want to put yourself out there because you know what's going to happen. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I know that for example, here, like I can text my friend and be like, having a messy week.
Mhm.
Just you tell her some stuff that only another military spouse who is solo parenting would ever understand and be like, okay,
Yeah.
drop everything, we're gonna go get coffee, or drop everything, I'm gonna come over and watch your kids while you get a shower or something like that. Boy, just not being able to have that it really is isolating. That
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
me that makes me sad. So I would love to it's such a great opportunity for communities. Like communities, I don't think probably understand
Mhm.
the great learning experience they have with a military family in their community to just teach them different perspectives of things. So, what is something that you guys do? Like, whenever do they come to you and just say, like, hey, I'm struggling, or are you doing regular surveys, or how are you reaching them and finding out this information? And then, how are you bridging that gap for them?
Yeah, so a little bit of all of that. So we frequently push out our connection. So at the brigade level, we're called the wellness team. There are multiple of us. So we have like the behavioral health consultant and the behavioral health NCO. We also have nurse case manager, brigade surgeon. They're doing all the medical readiness side of things. And then myself as the SFA, and then of course the 8 battalion SFAs who I just try to support and come alongside of them. And then we also have family advocacy at the brigade level that's doing a lot of just preventative type services for families to avoid getting to the point of domestic violence and child abuse and those kind of things. So a prevention and education piece to that. And then we also have the unit ministry team that we collaborate with. And so all of those pulled together make up the wellness team. And so we are frequently pushing our contact information out there in all the forums. So we talk to battalion leadership, company leadership, and then all the way down to the people in the station. We make ourselves available at every level. One of the very neat things about wellness team resources is that they don't have to necessarily go through chain of command like these E5s that are at a station level. They can just directly reach out to their battalion SFA or to me. And it could be that they have gotten a bill from TRICARE and they don't understand why. And we have the connection to help them figure out what is the accurate resolution. Or they may contact us and say that they're struggling like within their marriage. They're having to work long hours. Recruiting is very tough. It's very heavy stress. They really don't get a lot of downtime. So lots of times they are just looking for kind of just some support for some of those things. Maybe they're working super late hours and their marriage is struggling and they just need some connection to some resources and supports that could help with that. If we get contacted by spouses, lots of times it's about that, like you said, the solo parenting and, not anybody is, they're not near their family. And so we're helping bridge those gaps, like the wording that you use, by helping connect them to the things that are available to them. Lots of times it's virtual because just of the environment that they're in, but sometimes it is places in their community, connections in their community, or just bridging the gaps with, again, TRICARE, the healthcare being very convoluted, and we're helping put those pieces together to kind of take some of that off of their plate and not make them be on hold. I always joke around and say, be on the phone with TRICARE your lunch break every day, 5 days in a row, if you even get lunch break. I'm, trying to make it humorous, but that's just not an additional stressor that they need to be carrying. And, the spouse who is, trying to run kids back and forth to sports practices and all of those kind of things, and trying to deal with some of these areas that there's somebody who can take some of that off of their plate to help them with. And so we just try to make ourselves very available to them to whatever their quality of life day-to-day need might be.
Yeah, that's so important. Oh gosh, I said it before, and I'm really glad that they have somebody like you to advocate for them and your team, because it is tough. And when you're that age, especially in the military, it's really tough to know that you can even ask questions. And I think that's something that a lot of civilians don't understand is, you're not supposed to question things. And so that is a big preventative to getting help and reaching out. But
well, we tell them they're always worried about mission. That's the recruiting thing, is mission. So our tagline is kind of your wellness is our mission, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's great. We have about 30 more seconds. So I'm really glad that you could make it and come on. Thank you so much for rearranging your schedule for us. I really appreciate it. What would be one thing that you wish civilians knew about military families living in rural America?
I guess from an overall civilian perspective, just to continue to say, hey, thank you for your service, but also give it consideration. I know I work in recruiting command, and so that kind of is forefront in my mind a lot. But to consider service themselves and for their family, but to also just understand that those families, they need connection, and so to be open to being a friend and connecting with those military families and being a community for them.
Yeah, that is so important. And it doesn't have to be difficult, right? It doesn't being a community doesn't have to be difficult. It really is just grabbing a spouse's cell phone number and just like texting her every once in a while. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, when they're away from family and they don't have maybe like grandparents or aunts or uncles who could keep the kids overnight every now and then to just kind of give a break or a date night or something like that, having those kind of relationships where you can trade off, like keep their kids one weekend and they keep yours the next weekend, and just being able to have people that you trust and that you are part of, it's so key.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do, and thank you for coming on, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thanks, Michelle. You too. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Oh, okay, there you are.
Hey there.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you? That was that live? Was that being recorded?
Yeah, so I recorded that on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had a lot of work to do today, but instead of doing that, I rearranged my room and office, and so I haven't got my setup down yet. But
that's always good to do instead of working. Yes.
Yeah. That's my go-to is just panic, do something else. So,
I hear you on that.
Thanks for coming on, and everybody that's watching. This is Mark Casper with Tech for Troops, and I'll let you explain a little bit more about what you do because I think it's really cool.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having me on. Everybody here, Mark Casper, I'm Tech for Troops. We have 4 main programs. We support veterans all across the country. Actually, we've shipped around the world as well. Active duty and their families, veterans. But we have 4 main programs. The first one is data destruction. So if you're like, hey, Mark, I have a computer, I have data out of my banking, whatever it is on there, I want to guarantee the data is going to be gone. We do that. We have a wiping program that's HIPAA and DoD certified. And we have a hard drive shredder, so we turn it into teeny tiny pieces. And we can do that for businesses and individuals, corporations, you name it. We get data, really computers from all over the nation in. So that's our first program, and that's really the floor of our next 3 programs. First one is suicide prevention. It's for vets all over the country. We're internet based on that. Plus, we do some live or in-person events, and we've saved 16 lives in 18 months. And we do it through our Discord and Twitch. So we have a game master. That's his actual title. He gets to play video games for a job. And I think that's pretty cool. And he is working continuously on a daily basis to reach out to veterans and make sure they're okay. If they're in crisis, keep up with them, get them into 988, and then get them into a mental institution if that happens to be the way that goes. But we stay in touch with those veterans to make sure that somebody knows that, hey, bro, we got your back. Or, hey, sis, we got your back. The next program that we have is called Workforce Development. It's a training workforce development. It's a training program. So we have in-person training, and you learn how to use a computer. We started a new AI program, so you can learn how to use AI safely, as well as financial management, and really just all around how to use a computer. That's in person. And then we also have an online platform of 5,000 free classes for any veteran in the country to log into. T4teducation.org. Number 4, teducation.org. Absolutely free. You want to do Microsoft Office certification to the professional level. You want to take Python. You want to take Tableau, mindfulness, leadership, you name it. It's all on there. And it's all free for you. Excuse me. And then the last thing that we do is, since we do get donations in from all over the country, we get a lot of stuff in. Like I was in the back earlier today, and we're just looking at stuff that came in, and we opened up a briefcase. Like, you see, the old guys walking a briefcase down the street. It was a basketball scoreboard machine, right? You did the numbers, and you could do we got one of those in. Like, what? Right. So we get stuff in: laptops, desktop servers, router switches, you name it, we get it in. My oldest piece of equipment that I've received is a 1926 dictaphone, and that's in my museum. And then we have other things like TTY machines, but thousands upon thousands of laptops, thousands upon thousands of desktops, monitors, keyboards, servers. And we're doing so much. 2025 is going to be another banner year. Every year is a banner year, but we keep growing and growing and growing. So that's us in a very quick nutshell.
Yeah, that is a lot. That's a lot going on.
It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you have time for fun, because that's you're busy.
True. I travel. I do what I need to do. My family is very, very supportive. I've been married to my soulmate it'll be 40 years this year. And she understands that this is my mission, right? I got out of the Marine Corps in 87 and found this mission about 10 years ago now. And it's become not all consuming. I don't want to say it that way, because I love my family. I love going on vacations and all that other kind of stuff. But it is something that I'm passionate about, and I want to see it to its fruitful end.
Yeah. And you mentioned gaming. That is that's something that's really big right now, and especially in the veteran community. And I just feel like to me, it just came out of nowhere. I mean, it makes sense. I've been seeing esports and everything. They have like their gaming leagues and stuff like that. But really, veterans have been getting into gaming, and it's been quite an interesting way to help people connect and kind of break down the barriers, to be able to talk to people through Discord and stuff like that. It's very cool.
So if Jason was on, my game master, he would tell you how this came to fruition. So divorced from his wife when he was in the Navy. His wife took his son to Idaho to live, still there. So he was 5 years old when that happened. And he said the easiest and best way to stay in touch with his son was via gaming. Because if you're going to have a phone call with a 5-year-old, it's going to be like, hey, Dad, what's up? Yeah, goodbye. And that's all you're going to get. But if you're on a game and you're playing Mario Kart or something, you're going to be on for an hour talking and doing the thingy with the fingers and thingy. I don't do that stuff. But I mean, so you can have a conversation again. You can know each other. And his son's now 18 years old, and they have a relationship, and they still live 1,900 miles apart. So it's just really cool to see how he did that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a gamer. We were not allowed to have video games growing up. We used to go outside and play. That was my parents' philosophy. But my husband, he's a big gamer. Well, he was until he married me, and I keep him pretty occupied with a lot of housework and nonprofit work now. But yeah, it is something like that he always really enjoyed, because especially whenever you PCS, and he would be gaming with his friend in New Jersey, his other friend in Germany, and it's a really, really nice way to keep in touch and not feel awkward about sitting around. And it's a little bit more, I don't know. I don't want to say, macho. It's a little bit more macho than just getting on FaceTime and talking to your friend.
Yeah, I couldn't do a FaceTime with my buddies and talk, right? We're of that age, right? We're old enough to only do FaceTime. None of us game, because we're all, I'm 60. So It is what it is, and it's fun. And as well, there's that platform, the Discord and Twitch. If you don't know what those are, folks, Discord is sort of like a old school bulletin board, but you could do videos on it and private chat rooms and stuff. And then Twitch is really it's Netflix for video games. So if you're looking to watch somebody playing Fortnite and you want to see the number one player in the world, you can go find that person, or you can go watch Command and Conquer, or you can go watch, you name the video game, you can go watch it. So we use both of those platforms, and that really resonates with the rural veterans as well, because if they're at home, if they're self-isolating, or they're just bored on a Friday night because they have nothing to do, they can get online and video.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted to have at my event this year, is the gaming piece, because I brought this up to somebody and they're like, why? How does that make sense? I'm like, oh, how doesn't it make sense? Most people have some type of gaming system or a computer where they can get on, and do something. And even if you're not good at it, it's still fun to be with other people who get it.
Absolutely agree with that. Right. You're right. Most have a computer. If you don't have a computer, that's what Tech Troops is for. Right. We're working with the state of Virginia to put computers in veterans' hands across the whole Commonwealth. We'd love to take that to other states as well. North Carolina, where you're at, Michelle, and so many others. It's just going to take time, effort, and energy and money. It's always money for a nonprofit. I wish I had that budget to just go, hey, go open a place and go open a place and go open another place. It doesn't work that way in a nonprofit world. We're not borrowing money to go open up.
I know. Yeah. It's a fun balancing game, isn't it?
Truly is. Truly is. Yep. And that's what I said when I was looking at all that gear today we got in. So we do have an eBay store. We get stuff in like this basketball scoreboard control panel. Like, really, who am I going to give that to? Nobody, right? I can recycle it and get, probably for that box, I'd probably get about 4 to 8 cents. But I might be able to sell it on eBay and get 25 to 150. I really don't know how much it's worth, but we're looking to make ourselves self-sufficient and to be able to and enlarge our opportunities in other states using the money that we receive from eBay or wholesale or whatever it is we do to make the funding, right? Because the need is great across the nation. And with everything that's going on in the world, whether you like it or not, there's still going to be that need, and we still need help.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to have that type of income coming in to, that's the toughest part, is finding that income stream for a nonprofit to figure out how you're going to sustain this.
Yep.
But backing up here. So how did you even get into this line of work? Like, what was your journey like?
It was, so grew up in Texas, joined the Marine Corps at 18, met my wife 2 years in. So it was 1985. We got married. We got out in 87. So we got out because it was us together. She's from Richmond, Virginia. I'm from Texas. So we came to Richmond, not because of her per se, but there was the oil bust hit in 1987. So there's really nothing for me to go home to. Right.
Sorry,
and so
shoot,
don't worry about it. And so we came up here to Richmond, been here ever since. And then with that,
oh, so sorry.
Anyways, so with that, I thought I was going to be able to do, the easy dance. I'm a Marine. Everybody's going to love me. And all of a sudden find out like I'm just another number. And so I went to school, got my degree in marketing, and graduated in 97, did the corporate dance up and down, up and down, up and down. And finally, the founding woman of Tech for Troops, we met. She's like, come in, I want you to be on the board. So when I walked in the door, I'm going to say this term, God told me I was home, right? My head exploded. I was like this uniball, just going in my head. And I took the tour, and it was 750 square feet total. We had a little bit of warehouse space and 2 lockable rooms for data. And I was asked to be the executive director, and that was in December of 2015. And I was in, say, yeah, I'll do it. Right. I took over immediately. And then we've been on not because of me, I think because of the mission. I'm so mission bound, mission forward, that by the time October 2016 came around, we were growing, and now we're at 8,000 square feet. We think we have a new building to move into. I will go look at it next Friday to see if we're going to be able to accept it or not. It's being offered to us per se, right? I don't know what the lease is going to look like yet, but it's going to have somewhere close to 42,000 square feet. So we're going from 8,000 to a lot. We're going to be doing a whole lot more. We're going to be closer to Fort Gregg Adams, which used to be called Fort Lee. But that was that journey. It was brutal on me when I got out of the Marine Corps, because I really thought I had the tiger by the tail, and I had no idea that the tiger was eating me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I just saw my kid left my door open. My babysitter was supposed to come and she never showed up. So here we are. My husband's gone for a couple months. This is military life.
This is military life. Let's go with the flow.
This is the reality of being a military spouse. So you have a million things up in the air. But that is something I feel like a lot of people, whenever they're reflecting back on their time, whenever they transition out, they're like, I just thought it was going to be different. And they don't realize it whenever they're in it. And sometimes they let that swallow them up, and it doesn't look good. But I wish more people knew, transition is going to make you feel kind of weird. Like you might feel great one day, and then you might feel like, you don't know where your life is going to go the next day. It's a really odd roller coaster.
Yeah, you're on Easy Street, as you said, one day, and Desolation Boulevard the next, right? You have no idea why people are thinking the way they're thinking, and it took me a long time. Right? When I became Tech for Troops, when I joined this organization, that's when I felt at home. That's when I started settling down. I was a good person, don't get me wrong, but I had my moments, and it was just like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not settled? Why am I not enjoying this corporate dance? Why am I not trying to, and I just couldn't do it. It didn't work for me. And nothing against any company I was ever with. It was my fault. And I look at it now, like what I needed was that camaraderie of my brothers and sisters, no matter what DOD branch you were in, right? You need that. You need to be able to look at somebody and go, dude, you're Army. Come on. What do you got? Right? Huh? I'm a Marine. Come on. All that whole thing that we do and laugh about it and punch each other in the arm. I can't do that with a civilian. I can't punch somebody in the arm, right? Or call them I don't want to call somebody anything, right? I can't do that because they won't understand.
Yeah. It's an adjustment. I know that when my husband got out for like the 3 months that he was out, and got back in, it was like he went to a military friendly company. Like his boss was Air Force, and still it was odd because he told a joke and it was really dark humor, and they're like, wow, are you okay?
Oh yeah.
He's like,
I can't say that.
Yeah, that's odd. But I mean, people think, you need to talk to somebody or whatever. It needs to be sitting around in a circle and talking and, but no, you just need to relate to somebody or have that commonality. I mean, whenever you're on base, you have at least one thing in common, you know what I mean? And then you go into the civilian world and it's like, I don't even know who I am right now because I was brainwashed to be somebody else. Yep. And that was just stripped away from me. I don't put on a uniform anymore. So who am I without this uniform? It is a really weird, for both the service member and the spouse, I think too. It's just an odd place to be in. You're in like no man's land for a while.
I am in agreement with you. I was at a TAPS program years ago, right? This is probably 5-6 years ago before the pandemic. And the command sergeant major walked up to me and he's like, Mark, I'm scared. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out, because he was getting out. And I'm like, come see me. Let's talk. I got him a career coach, and we paid for it out of Tech for Troops pocket, right? It's not our mission, but this dude's life was in jeopardy. I could see it in his eyes. And my career coach that I use, it took him from, I don't know, to, damn, I got this. Everything's going to be okay. And she helped him flip that switch in his head. And that's really what we all need, is that switch to be flipped for us, whether we do it ourselves or somebody else does it for us. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking out there. There's probably deer playing out. Okay, I was going to say there's deer probably playing out by the fence. So they're just both going to go crazy right now.
That's fun. That's fun. Oh, my cat's coming to join too.
We got it going tonight.
It's been a crazy week. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. That's where I'm at.
Absolutely agree with that.
That's okay. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, these guys that move back to rural areas, though, it's like, what do you have there? You don't have. You probably have an American Legion or a VFW, maybe full of, I don't know, 70-plus-year-old people that. Yeah. It's a little bit different crowd than you're used to. And at first it's hard to, it's probably not your scene. And there's really no other social gatherings to go to. There's probably no even pickup basketball or, whatever. There's really not much to do in rural America. Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of people, they find peace in it, but they also isolate in it. Mm-hmm. And I even know, like, I caught myself doing it this week. My husband left. My baby had strep throat. I mean, it was just like all the perfect storm. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to close myself off. I'm going to isolate. I'm just going to hunker down. And I'm like, no, that's I know that's the wrong thing to do. But it's so easy to do that. And it's almost human nature to do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Especially how we operate as a society nowadays. Mm-hmm. And in rural America, it's just so easy to do that. You might have a couple acres in between houses, so people aren't going to check on you. If you're not getting out, you're not getting checked on. So it's so important to, even if you're really not a gamer, like, hop on. I'm not a huge gamer, but there's types of games that I like to play that are relaxing.
Yeah. Jason is my game master, is very, very good at bringing in different games in different ways, right? So we have a Dungeon and Dragon. I don't know if he's like a lead or a wizard or a poop. I don't know what he is, a poobah, right? But they play Dungeon. I think they have
the Dungeon Master.
Master. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons. I laughed so hard. The first time I ever saw Dungeons and Dragons being played was at my kitchen table in Fort Drum, and it was these manly men, like making voices and all this stuff. And it's like, what are you doing? I've never witnessed this. But people in the military, they really like these types of games.
Yeah. So I think they have 3 different games going on. I don't know if it's the same time or at different times of days and nights and stuff. But I mean, he went from Dungeons and Dragons. They do Fortnite. They do Plastic Duck, which is sort of a Zen, sort of a zone out type of game. And it's not even a game. You don't play. You just watch. And it's plastic, like the yellow duckies, drops into a pool and it floats. And then other ones drop in with different colors and might have stripes, might be black and white, might be whatever. But they just float. And that's all they do. And you're just watching it and you're literally like going, whoa, wow. And they do that, and like 80 people will watch that for 3 hours. And it's just, it's soothing. It really is. Plastic Duck is soothing. So, I mean, we do different things for folks out there. And then in the Richmond area, especially because it's hard. I mean, as you know, a nonprofit, we can't just throw stuff in the car and go 600 miles and go put on an event and drive back. It doesn't work that way. It did. But we would love to be able to travel more and bring what we have to others so they could see how easy it is to get involved or back involved with the military community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you'll have to see how far my Pennsylvania event is.
It's 6 hours one way, up 81, right?
Really?
And that's with traffic. Yeah, I mean that's really longer.
No, it can't be, because it's 6.5 hours from here to my house in Pennsylvania.
Well, then maybe it's 5. I mean, that's like to the border. That's like Winchester, Virginia, and then I have to go. I think, I don't know. It's up there. It's north, right? I go south. You go north. We'll wave at each other passing by. I don't know.
Well, we'll get you. We'll add in 2026 a Virginia festival.
I think we should. And as well, you're probably going 900 miles an hour up the highway. Well, I'm only going 73.
My husband likes me to go 75 on the dot to save gas.
There we go. See, there you go. I love that.
I have to be
Yeah.
responsible while I'm yelling at 3 kids and 2 dogs in the back.
Oh, absolutely. You got to be responsible for that. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't blame him on that. Don't blame him on that at all.
Yeah. So I'll be making that trip here in Easter time, loading all the kids, dogs, and hopefully not 2 cats. But it's always a journey. People always stare at me whenever I roll out of the car they're like, the kids just keep coming. And then there's dogs that come out. It's like, yeah, it's a circus in here.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters, 3 granddaughters. I love my life. I really have a good life thanks to my wife and all of them.
Oh, good. All right, so are you on the outskirts of Richmond then, or are you right in it?
Outskirts. No, I got some land. I got about 6 acres. As you say, self-isolate, right? When I get off on a Friday night, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't even want to go anywhere on a Monday night, let alone a Friday night. And I don't honestly care if I leave the land until Monday morning. I got chopping wood to do. I got to take down trees. I got to mow in the summertime. All that stuff that I do. And I don't need to go anywhere. I'd much rather be by myself and with my family, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's pretty stereotypical of a rural veteran. It is tough to get them out and away from work. Really, it is always hard. My dad's not a veteran, but it's always hard to drag him away from work. And we always say that he goes on work vacations. He comes to my sister. One of them lives in Michigan. I live down here in North Carolina, so he comes down a week or 2 at our houses and works.
See, and that's what I would do for you, right? If I needed to, like Saturday, we had the big ice storm up here, and one of my daughters lost a whole bunch of tree limbs, and it was 5 hours of cut chainsawing and loading up the trash and all that kind of stuff, and it's just what you do. Right. You give of yourself, especially when you're military, you give of yourself, and civilians for the most part don't recognize that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and put your hand where other people won't put it, because you're like, all right, it hadn't killed me yet. It's not going to kill me now. So you just go do it. And they're like, why'd you do that? Well, because I'm not going to pay somebody else to do it. I'm going to do it myself.
Right. And you don't even think about it. And it's easy, like whenever you live in rural America, it's just so easy to lose yourself in work and constantly, I know we do it here, like we're constantly improving our house, our landscape, our garden, our things like that. And that's because that's what we like to do. And we like to be self-sufficient. But I think sometimes I wish that we took more time for relaxation and getting out and doing stuff instead of work all the time. But it's so easy to do, and it's so easy for a lot of rural families to just get so involved in your land. But it's really, really important to get out there and build your community, because it's not going to build itself. And one day you are going to need your community. And
community is not just military; it's civilians as well, right? So if your next door neighbor or neighbors is not, it's okay, right? As long as you create a relationship with them, when the SHTF, when it hits the fan, then you should have somebody to call on.
Yeah, I always say, like, you can't just have something happen to you and expect people to show up at your door with casserole. Like, you have to go out and you have to figure it out. And that's why I really like our events, because we're trying to teach civilians and veterans how to come together and support one another. Because just as much as civilians need to understand how to support veterans need to understand how to assimilate into the civilian culture that's going to be the rest of their life. I don't think that we should really coddle the veteran population. You know what I mean? Like, in the civilian workforce, like, you've got to learn to live the second half, this next chapter. But we all need to learn and appreciate the parts of our past that make it interesting and different,
Totally agree with you. 100%. Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. We have about 2 more minutes here. So is there anything else about Tech for Troops that you want to tell us about, or anything that you might have missed? Any socials or websites?
Yeah. So, our page is www, of course, techfortroops.org, techfortroops.org, techfortroops.org. And come on in, see where we're at. If you're in the Richmond area, you're driving through, Michelle, I want you one day when you're driving through to stop in and see it. It's a cool place. It's not what people think it is. We've had, and we're nonpartisan folks, completely nonpartisan, left or right. I don't care. As long as you're not a commie or a socialist, I'll support you if you support the veterans. Yeah, and that sounds funny, but it's true. And so when the governor's wife came in and when Senator Warner came in, and it's R's and D's both coming in and seeing this, they walk away astounded by the level of stuff that we get and the inventory that we have and what we do and how we do it. And they're like, how are you keeping up with all this? And it's because I have a very dedicated staff, mainly veterans, but not all veterans. We hire civilians as well. And they're very much part of who we are. And they're very much part of our mission of supporting veterans. So that's Tech for Troops. Come in and see us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate your time and all that you do.
Thank you for having me. Hey, everybody. God bless America.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. And sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
To thank our listeners for joining the Cliff Kelly American Hero podcast today. And I'm Adelena Marshall. I am a VA nurse, and I would like to talk to our audience about the VA and how important it is that our nurses remain dedicated during this period of change. We know there's changes. We're willing to support those changes to protect our veterans and make sure that their health care is not interrupted. It is very important for our veterans to understand that our staff, including the doctors, social workers, as well as RNs who we represent, remain very dedicated to carrying on the mission of the VA as our veterans have carried out their missions. The VA nurses are highly skilled, and it takes years to accumulate that education and that skill set. We want to keep our nurses at the VA. Otherwise, other facilities will hire them, and that skill set will be lost to the VA and to our veterans. The VA spends a lot of money training our staff as well as our RNs. Many of our doctors train at the VA, and they've had very good experience with positive outcomes for our veterans. Our veterans come to the VA for all kind of healthcare delivery. So we're across the spectrum: women's health care, mental health treatment, acute mental health, long-term treatment, short-term treatment. Our veterans feel very comfortable coming to the VA. They choose the VA for one reason, is that they know the staff. Our staff doesn't change frequently. During COVID, our nurses didn't leave. They stayed. They didn't go to higher paying positions. The VA does not pay the nurses the same market rate that other facilities pay. But our nurses are there because we have a dedication to our veterans. We see our veterans all the time. Some of the veterans have even grown old with me. And I get so much joy when I see that they've come back and they've recovered and how healthy they look. And I know that they're there because of our dedication to our veterans. Again, our veterans have gained the trust. VA has gained the trust of our veterans. We have veterans who care for veterans. Many of our staff, many of our nurses for sure, are veterans themselves. And they guard our veterans. They hold the standard and make all of us work to a higher standard to deliver that care. It's important that our veterans know this. It's important that our veterans understand that the same personnel that they are used to will remain and be dedicated to delivery of their health care. We have healthcare professionals that are proud to work at the VA. We're very proud that we're there. It's hard to be hired. The standards are very high. It's very hard to get hired in the VA. Well, actually, on most government jobs, because those jobs do not pay the same as private sector. What motivates us is our veterans. Is what they went through, what they trained for, what they come back, sometime many of them broken, and we're there to help them heal. We are very, very, very embracing of our veterans. Our veterans are in our home. They are in our community. They are our neighbors. They have been our teachers. They are our Uber drivers. They are our Hub Grub delivery. They are here in our community, and we have to embrace them. And we know that many of them suffer. There is some that I have had the experience that one of them was waiting for me to come to work because he wanted to share with me that he was in a crisis. And he knew that I would take the time to sit there and talk to him. Our nurses are not timed by how much time we can spend with our veterans. If a veteran comes to me and they're in crisis and they need me to talk to them for a half an hour or more, that's what I will do, because that's what I'm there for. We assess our veterans. Our veterans come in, they may come in for mental health, they may come in for a heart problem, they may come in for cancer treatment, but we're going to treat the whole person. We're not going to just look at them as a cancer patient or as a patient who has mental health. When they come in, we want to make sure that their blood pressures are stable. We want to make sure that they don't have any heart disease. we look for, we look at them as a whole and what can we help. I know one experience I had, I was monitoring a hall on a mental health unit, giving one of the staff a break. And I noticed this patient going back and forth to the bathroom. And I asked him if he was okay. And he said, no, I just have to keep going to the bathroom. So I reached out to the NP and I asked her if she could order some tests for him because I was concerned, thinking maybe he had a urinary tract infection. Actually, he had stage 4 prostate cancer. And we were able to intervene just for that observation. I didn't like, oh, okay, he just keeps going to the bathroom. No, I questioned why was he going to the bathroom so frequently. And many of our nurses are the same way. We know our patients. They come to us month after month, week after week, year after year. We know their families. We're intimate with how their life is going. They have the time to talk to us about it. We have the time to motivate them, to educate them for recovery, about their medication and how do you take it, and making sure that whatever information we give them, they take it back and share it with other veterans and with their family. So we're not just supporting our veterans, we're really supporting our country and those that are in need. Because our veterans leave with a lot of education about health care, and we encourage them to take it back. We have state-of-the-art equipment for our veterans. So if we lose staff, then all that knowledge is gone. And then now somebody else has to be trained. And right now there is a freeze. And as we lose staff, it causes an impact. However, our nurses will pick up and they will do what they need to do to get to care for the veterans. So we want the country to know that we're there. We are willing to support the changes that we know are coming. We will do our very best to continue to deliver the high standard of care that the VA expects of us. We're not there because it's glamorous. We're not there because it pays a lot of money. We're there because our veterans need us. I went to the VA when the Saudi conflict started. And when it ended, I was going to leave. But it was hard. It was very hard to leave our veterans. So I decided to stay. I didn't go to other nearby hospitals to work. I decided to stay there at the VA. And I have brothers, I have my father, uncles, cousins, again, neighbors, friends who are veterans. And I feel that they didn't abandon us, and we will not abandon them. We are totally dedicated to recovery of our veterans. It would cost more money to hire new staff, more time to train them. We try to encourage people to come to the VA to work. We want them to be there. We have dedicated employees across the system. Our greeters at the door, our secretaries, our ALDs. We need health techs that will be there to help support the delivery of care. Care is not a drive-through. It's an extended process that takes a lot of people on board to save people's lives. When a patient's call bell rings, our staff is on it. They are on it really very quickly. When there is a code means that somebody may have had a heart attack or something. our nurses are on it. The team is there. They are highly skilled and trained to deliver this level of emergency care. We have many veterans who are homeless. In the winter, they come to the VA because they will be warm, they will be provided some food, and then if needed, the social worker will help to find them shelter for that period of time. So when the weather is very cold or only hot, our veterans come to the VA because they know that they're going to be cared for. Our veterans can walk in and get appointments. Private sector, we can't do that. It takes me almost 30 days to get an appointment with my doctor. I can't just call. They'll tell me to go to Imaging Care or something. But our veterans can walk in and they know that we welcome them and that they will be cared for. These are trying times, we know. We do believe that the veteran best interest will be served. We believe that we can best serve our veterans and that the administration will hear us, that they understand the importance of caring for our veterans. Our veterans, as I stated before, are everywhere. They're farmers, bus drivers, cab drivers, garbage collectors. We all are in this together. And we're going to stay focused on caring for our veterans. Our jobs at the VA can be challenging. Oftentimes, we are short-staffed across the board, health techs, nurses, but our staff will pull together, our nurses will pull together to make sure that delivery of care remains very high. The standards are very high. We take a lot of pride in that care. I'm proud to be a VA nurse, federal nurse. I used to work at other hospitals throughout the country, but VA was my calling. Mental health, helping our veterans to get through these challenges. Our veterans know that if they need something, the staff will provide it. The staff will buy things. We buy stuff that helps them with their activity of daily living. Shampoo, or if we get a veteran that may need a shirt or something, or pants, or a female vet, setting up her care if she's staying and making sure that she's comfortable, making sure that she has all the things that she needs to feel welcome. We have groups for mental health, and those veterans are in groups almost the entire day that they attend some kind of group, whether it's for mental health, substance abuse, alcohol abuse. They seek the VA. Many healthcare discoveries have been done through the VA. The process of caring for patients has been developed many times at the VA. So we're known for the standard of care and for the innovation that the VA can deliver to healthcare. Again, we want our veterans to understand that you are welcome. Please come. Please understand that you are supported. Understand that the changes that are being made in the VA will be for the good, will be for the delivery of your care. The veterans that work next to us, that work with us, holds us to a high standard. They go that extra mile, and they make us go that extra mile for our veterans. Our veterans like to come to the VA after their appointments, and it's a meeting place for them. They feel safe there. Many of them visit our cafeteria. They visit the stores there that is provided, the canteen. And some of them come and they just spend the day. And they know the staff. You're walking through the hallways. Hey, hi. You know, how you doing? We can take that time to make them feel welcome and cared for. And they will stay. And they have multiple appointments. We try to correlate the time. The staff knows that they have other appointments. The staff sometimes will remind them that they may have to go to the eye doctor, or we have someone who helps the blind. Actually, it's a very interesting program they have there to help our veterans adjust to the loss of their sight. This particular person, I know for a fact, will visit them in nursing homes, even though that's not part of what her assignment is. She will take her personal time to go there to make sure that they're able to adjust to a sightless situation. She calls them. I've heard her to argue with some of the staff in these nursing facilities, because if they're not putting them eye drops in on time, she is upset. She is really upset. So she's not a veteran, but she's dedicated to the veterans. She's dedicated. She makes sure they have the equipment. She makes sure they have phones if they're hard of hearing. Um, we have optometrists there. We have podiatry. We have all of these things at the VA I work for. It's kind of like one-stop shopping. Our veterans could come there, spend a day, get everything done that they need, and then they go. They're happy when they leave. They're joyful. They interact with the staff because the staff knows them. We have pharmacy, and they're there in the pharmacist waiting for their medication. We do extensive medication education for our veterans because they need that medication to recover. And we want our patients to move from being ill towards recovery. Our veterans are everything to us. They have made a great sacrifice for our country, and we owe them whatever we can provide for them. Our veterans are made up of non-citizens. Non-citizens can join the military, and they get care at the VA. So we see a wide variety of veterans. We learn a lot from them. We want to support them more than 100% if that's possible. When someone passes at the VA, the available staff is there to honor their passing. You don't see that in private sector. We know what that veteran had went through, what that veteran has experienced. They deserve that honor. The flag is over their casket, and there's an announcement made And whatever staff is there, or whatever area the casket's moving through, everybody stops and they have silence to honor that veteran. We're not going to find that in private sector. Our veterans, this before COVID, they used to come there and they come there for AA, and they used to come there for other activities. And that was their place, that the VA belongs to our veterans. That is their hospital, and they take ownership of it. Oftentimes you see veterans there with their children or with their grandchildren, and they're allowed to come there to support that veteran, and we support them. The children are happy to see the staff. They feel are welcoming. They feel friendly towards us. They feel that we're friendly towards them. And they come there with either their parents or their grandparents. Our women's health clinic, anticipating enlarging it, and we do hope that will go forward. And that where I work at, they've taken great steps to making that a private area for our female veterans, so they can feel comfortable coming there. We also had a big program to honor our female veterans. We want them to come there and to be treated as a veteran, not being seen as necessarily female, but as a veteran, to honor them, to honor their sacrifice too. Our veterans teach us a lot, and that teaching goes a long way in helping us to understand them and to care for them. We have staff that may bring in suitcases, so our veterans who are homeless can be able to keep all their belongings together. I don't think they're going to find that in private sector. We have staff during the holiday and football games who will have a Super Bowl party for the veterans, and they provide everything out of their own pocket. That's how dedicated our staff is to the veterans. We want to make sure that our veterans feel proud to come to the VA and proud to get their care at the VA. We will be there for them. We're not going to go anywhere. Our place and our training and the investment that the VA has made into their staff shows that we are qualified to be there and to support our veterans, no matter what. When we leave the VA, when we come home at night, leave after the end of the day, we think about our veterans. We think about them on the holiday. We think about them during the cold snap, during the weather, during the hot weather. We want to know if our veterans are okay. And so, to the public, we want everyone to know that our dedication remains for our veterans. We honor our veterans, and we plan to continue to work to the best of our ability. We know that there's changes are coming, and we're willing to accept these changes for the betterment of the delivery of care for our veterans. As I'm talking to you now, I'm thinking of a few veterans that when I go to work tomorrow, that I'll be excited to see and hope that they've made progress since I've been gone.
Intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
See my camera. Oh, how can you hear me okay? Manny? You are live. Well, hello. Thank you for letting me know. I am Yvette Jones Swanson, veterans, homeless housing advocate and consultant. I am here in the Chicagoland area. And I, again, always want to thank the Cliff Kelly Show on having a space for me here on America's Heroes Group, where we talk about all things veterans. And today, I am going to talk about, this is just amazing. Let me give you a little bit backstory on my story so that then you can understand why this is so amazing to me and also to the community at large. I have been housing homeless veterans for the past 22 years. I was my first homeless veteran that I housed back in 1993. I was a young wife and I was in an abusive marriage. My husband, who was serving at the time, was actively serving in the Marine Corps Reserve, and he was just abusive. And I would run away for my safety, and there were never any resources for me. I'm an Army veteran. I would go to the VA to ask for help. I needed some type of help. And I never received that help. So years later, when I became a realtor, I remembered those days I remembered being homeless and not having resources. And I made it my mission as a veteran, as a realtor, to go back and get these homeless veterans and provide them with resources. But I didn't stop there. I also conducted trainings and private sessions with social workers and case managers, and I also wrote a class for the real estate industry that I taught for 3 years to teach realtors how to work effectively in the veteran community, specifically with homeless veterans. Because when you think about homeless, and I've had a lot of realtors and a lot of people tell me this, you think about a homeless person, they don't have any money. They're homeless. Why would I help them to waste my energy in trying to find them someplace to live, and they don't have the resources, they don't have any money, they don't have good credit. Why am I wasting my energy? You know, that's how some people feel. Some people even think homeless veterans sleep in the gutter, sleep behind dumpsters, which I did move a veteran out who did sleep behind the dumpster of a Dunkin' Donuts. True story. He was housed under the Housing First program. But this is not the case all the time. Veterans are not in the streets homeless and bummy. That's not the case. We have veterans who retire. You heard me, and I also did a show a few months ago on my husband, who spent 37 years in the Army, retired as a master sergeant, unhoused. Unhoused. He doesn't like for me to say homeless because he had money to spend for motel and timeshares and all of that. But still, he retired unhoused. And I housed him, not once, but twice. You have senior veterans. True story. I did a video on her as well. She went to the VA, 75 years old, 3 tours of duty, 2 bronze medals for exemplary work, as she states it all the time. She's nobody's fool. She was homeless, 75, went to the VA. They turned her back around with a piece of paper with my name on top and other realtors' names behind mine. And she called me first. And luckily, I thank God all the time that I was the one who answered the phone to service her the very next day. And she was approved by one of the investors who I service to move into his 2-bedroom apartment. Something happened where she fell sick and she was hospitalized for 20 days. And the investor said, look, I can't help a senior sickly veteran. I just can't do it. He didn't have the resources for that. So the second time I housed her, yep, you got it. She went to the hospital and left the hospital homeless again. I should say the VA homeless again. And I housed her the second time around. This time she's in a senior facility in her own apartment with her own key, and she's loving it because now she's around people. And if she wants to retreat back, she has a key to go inside her own apartment. So with that being said, the VA contacts me or sends veterans my way who are the most hardest to house. I kid you not. I housed a veteran who was, and he's in information that I'm going to share with you. He was in a U-Haul facility in a wheelchair. Who lives in a U-Haul facility in a wheelchair? Hello, Mr. Derek Green, procurement officer. So who lives in a U-Haul facility? That's not a place where a person lives. And in a wheelchair as a homeless veteran. Well, needless to say, the VA called me and I got him housed in a condominium downtown Chicago overlooking Navy Pier, the old White Sox Park, overlooking the Lake Michigan. I mean, just who does that? Well, I do. I am Yvette Jones Swanson, National Veterans Homeless Housing Advocate and Consultant. My business, Vet Mentors, is SBA certified and VA verified. Hold on. I carry a badge now. I have been accepted in the VA over 20 years ago. So now we're going to talk about some very exciting ventures that I just had to do, because serving in the homeless veteran space for 22 years, I had to create a larger voice. And in creating a larger voice, I've created 5 national publications that I am about to publish through my publishing company, DBA Vet Mentors Publishing. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. All of this knowledge had to come out. It had to come out. It just couldn't stay here. And I'm seeing all of these people grappling at trying to find information and trying to find resources to house a homeless veteran who's 75 years old, who is in a wheelchair, who was just released from being incarcerated, who was released from or retired from the military, homeless. All of these veterans have one thing in common. Can anybody tell me that one thing that all of these veterans have in common? Well, you're going too slow. I'm here to tell you. They all have resources. You're a veteran, you have access to resources through your city, through your state, through your federal government. It's how you know how to access those resources is where the stumbling blocks come in, because if you don't know how to access those resources, then you won't get served if you don't know where to go. So the first publication I created, it is called, and I know the book may be backwards on camera, and the 5-part series will be released in March as a publication, and 2 of them so far are workshops. And my company, Vet Mentors LLC, and myself, corporate trainer Yvette Hat, will be conducting those trainings. So this first publication is for social workers, case managers, human care professionals, and those human care professionals, they are your RN nurses, they are your emergency nurses, they are your paramedics, they are your police officers, they are your fire department workers, the firemen. These are just a small segment of human care professionals. Then you also have your concerned citizens. You may be pulled up at a stoplight and a veteran comes up to you who's homeless. Now you know what to do because you have acquired the collaborative housing solutions for homeless veterans. In this publication, it has 112 pages of information. I also teach you how to use AI to incorporate that in your search for resources for homeless veterans. This has sped the game up so quickly that now you don't have to wait to call an office at 9 a.m. the next day and let that homeless veteran walk out the door the night before because you don't know how to access emergency services for this veteran. That's what this publication, that's what this national publication will teach you. Social workers, case managers, human care professionals, and concerned citizens. Now, I said, okay, that's good. This publication is really, really good for that segment of the market. But then I said, a veteran might come into the VA and that veteran may not sit with the case manager or a social worker who had already gone through that publication or who had already come through my workshop. So now what does this homeless veteran get to do? Yep, you got it. Walk back out the door, homeless and unhoused, because he or she did not sit down with the social worker, case manager, or human care professional who had the answers to have the wherewithal to know where to go to get these homeless veterans resources. That's what this publication does for the social workers, case managers, and human care professionals. So I said, if that happens, if a homeless veteran walks into a VA facility or police department, or you just happen to see one out and about, what do you do? So I said, now for this homeless veteran, if they don't find you with this information, how can they help themselves? Because it's one thing you can provide people bread and fish, but it's another thing when you teach a person how to go fish and how to plant some seeds to grow some wheat or barley. So now you're teaching this veteran how to help and serve others. And that's what the next publication does. This book right here, this is called Finding Home. This is a nationwide resource guide for supporting homeless veterans. Now, and you know, I'm certified as an AI certification is in here, but I can create stuff like this. I took some classes and I learned how to incorporate AI in the work that I do. And also in every publication, it teaches the reader how to access these resources. And that's the main thing that a homeless veteran needs is resources. Homeless veteran can't do anything without resources. I was a homeless veteran. I just stopped counting. I was in a tumultuous marriage in this from 87 to 93. And the VA never helped me once. I was even applying for VA disability because upon leaving the Army, I was assaulted several times by my drill sergeant. So now I have experienced military sexual trauma. So now I'm looking like, who's here to help me? There are no resources anywhere to be found. And if they were not in front of me to utilize. So I have made sharing resources, teaching others how to acquire these resources, all for the sake of housing our homeless veterans nationwide. I've sent resources as far as Hawaii. I met a young lady on TikTok because I advertise what I do. If you're a homeless veteran, you need resources, and not just for a homeless veteran, and you know, one of the reasons why we have homeless veterans, a big reason, is because of the finances. But that's also another benefit that veterans can tap into. When we are serving in the military, things happen that we have no control over. I had no control over being cute and sexy. I probably wasn't in my uniform, but I'm just saying, in my mind, I'm always cute and sexy. So I had no control over how someone saw me and wanted to take advantage of me at 18. And now I'm coming home, my head is turned around backwards because the grown man had assaulted me, not just one time, several times. So now I get to come back in society angry and mad and still having to put my 2 feet on the ground to keep moving in life. So I was in college and I was at the university. That didn't go too well because I came home with my head not right. So my father and my brother came and got me, and I enrolled in a city college here that I am conducting. My team and I were there, and we conduct veteran housing and home buying workshops through city colleges. So it's a lot of benefits and resources that veterans have. Another resource and benefit that veterans have, and is also in these books, is educational benefits. At city colleges of Chicago, a homeless veteran, check this out. Let's say a homeless veteran gets the resources for housing. He or she gets a HUD-VASH voucher. Now his or her rent is being paid by the government, so the landlord is happy. They have a wonderful tenant and guaranteed rents. And now you're like, listen, hey, Joe, I'm doing this workshop at Harold Washington College, and they always have the educational director or somebody come in to talk to you, to talk to the group about advancing your career choices and your educational choices. You can go to a program for like 6 months, 9 months, I forgot what it was, and graduate. Check this out. Graduate with an $80,000 a year job. Now you can apply for a VA loan, and you can probably also use that HUD-VASH as leverage voucher, that HUD-VASH voucher. Or you might want to say, you know what, I'm going to give this voucher away. I got my money coming in. I'm 100% service connected disabled veteran because I know what my benefits are. I know where the resources are because I read the book and came to the workshop. So now I know. So now you're about to graduate, and we bring in our loan officer, Mr. Ricardo Wardlow, and he and his team now get you pre-approved for a house. Baby, didn't you just go from being homeless to now getting an $80,000 a year job to owning your own home? But we don't stop there. No, we can't stop there with our veterans. We help you get set up where you not only can buy a single family house, you can buy a 2-unit, 3-unit, or 4-unit building with the VA loan. But you wouldn't have known that if you didn't know how to acquire your resources. And that's what I am all about, is helping veterans and the community know and how to find resources for this unhoused veteran. Let's say you're not even unhoused. You got a crib. You just want to change your career. Well, guess what? We have that too. And from boots to business, finding your passion in business. That's what I had to do as an unhoused, homeless female veteran who went and got her real estate license and found the veteran community and started gathering up like a little squirrel all of these resources. And then enhance that with advanced technology to be able to find resources nationwide and help veterans understand how to do the same. Now, this program, From Boots to Business, I was asked to write this program so that I can bring this program to a nationwide organization for veterans in business or looking to go into business. So that will be a program offered, not just from the book, but live, where you can tap into it, get the program, or come to a live face-to-face training. Now, remember I told you I'm a veteran, and I've got 5 programs right now that are going to be launched in March of 2020. I wrote a class and taught the class to veterans on how to work with Section 8, not just HUD-VASH, but the entire housing, urban development, Section 8 voucher. Everybody knows that term, right? Section 8. So I wrote a class for realtors, and I love being a realtor. And I know a lot of realtors love being a realtor, but we have to decide who we're going to service. They call it a niche market, niche, the younger people's niche, but it's a niche market. And I found mine very early on because it was easy for me. I was taking my passion and I turned it into a business, not just as a realtor, but also as a consultant. I'm also a contractor. So a realtor's blueprint, this program, and I'm also submitting this to the Main Street Board of Realtors as a 3-hour CE class, so realtors can learn how to service our homeless veterans, from homeless to homeownership. And I can't stress this enough that as a realtor myself, I have housed and I have put teams together and taught teams how to go out into the community and house homeless veterans, helping them find their resources, helping investors understand that this is a good business here. You have a 60-unit building. Oh yeah, we can, probably fill that up. More than likely, I filled up a 40-unit building in 3 months in the wintertime. The owner said, "Oh, Yvette, we know it's cold. I'm sitting up at my desk by the bay window in a big old blanket, my hat on. It was just cold in Chicago." And I'm listening to them on the phone telling me, "Oh, you can wait until the spring." There's no waiting when you're housing a homeless veteran. It's cold out. I'm inside my house and I'm still cold. Think about a homeless veteran who is outside cold right now, and all they need to know is how to find resources to get them housed, and you don't know how to do it. Shame on you. So I told these two investors, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry, I got you. I know where to find 40, at least, homeless veterans to fill up these units. When I tell you their heads spun around when I filled those 40 units in 3 months, and I'm still in contact with a lot of those veterans. It just hurts my heart to know that we have all of these resources out here and we still have all of these homeless veterans because nobody or everybody doesn't know how to house our homeless veterans. And over 22 years of housing homeless veterans, it's a simple blueprint. It's connecting people. That's all this is connecting people. My name is Yvette Jones Swanson. I am the CEO and founder of Vet Mentors, LLC. I am an Army veteran, once homeless several times, military sexual trauma, major PTSD, because if I'm not doing something, I'm just a wreck. And I know the resources and what it takes to house our nation's homeless veterans. So I've got 5 publications being launched in March of 2025, and I'm launching 2 in April, one for, is it St. Louis? Because I've got 3 requests for homeless, for resources for Akron, Ohio. For Akron, Ohio. Akron, Ohio will be getting a resource guidebook. I did a resource guidebook for entrepreneurs in Atlanta, Georgia, who are looking to open a veteran care home. Now, when I say housing homeless veterans, you have to know that somebody will be paying you. You're not just housing a homeless veteran because you have a big heart. You're housing homeless veterans, but this is also a business. and the government is spending money left and right on everything else. So why won't you tap into this market and do something good for our homeless veterans? Contact me. My information is just everywhere. You can follow me on all platforms on social media. My name is Yvette Jones Swanson. And send me your information so I can add you to the information and stay in touch.
AHG
Thank you
Connects,
for being
where
here.
voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex.
G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Heroes Group live stream digital media show. I'm your host, Stephanie. I am here for the next half hour. Told you I would be back. And I'm excited to be here and discussing the new current legislation that has been introduced. Although I say new, it is new for this congressional session. I will say that these legislative bills are a little bit more than a month old, but let me let you know what happens. So when a congressional person submits a piece of legislation to be introduced, it'll be introduced and it'll be added into the register. It's added to congress.gov. When it's added to congress.gov, it typically just only has minimal information. It has the bill number, it has the purpose, and basically what committee it's submitted into to be reviewed, referred, and then processed. Nothing more than that. It actually, most of them don't even come with a title. So whenever I do go through legislation, I don't typically talk about it until it has a title. That way it's not so confusing to y'all when I talk about certain bills. And also when bills are often introduced, they don't actually have their full text added. It just has the purpose. And that's all that it tells you. You don't get any of the nitty gritty of what's going on. Most people, when they think about congressional bills, they really think of the huge funding bills, like Obamacare, when that was being submitted. And Nancy Pelosi had said, or allegedly said that, it's so much to read. We'll get into it after we pass it. Those type of things. That almost never really happens. I'm still in shock that was said out there. But most congressional bills are very readable, usually a page or two, and very, very easy. There's few exceptions, like the Honoring or PACT Act that was passed a couple of years ago. That one was longer, but that had a lot of meat to it about different things for VA disability, and they also added a funding portion to it, but I mean, it's something to get at another time, but I'm just saying that's usually the exceptions. Usually they're fairly long bills, fairly short bills. And so the ones I do want to talk about, most of them are for veterans. And a lot of them are really awesome and would love to get these passed. Some of these have been submitted every congressional session and have yet to be passed. Most bills don't pass at all. They range, depending on the congressional session, about 4 to 8% of all bills that are introduced are passed. So majority of them actually do pass in these giant funding bills too, as a giant package. Some of them do go through and get passed individually, and those are really great. Excuse me. It happens when you have to talk a lot. So the first one I do want to talk about is Senate Bill 124. It was introduced by Senator Jerry Moran, who has been a longstanding senator for the Veterans Affairs Committee, been doing really great things. He introduced one of the congressional bills that I really had been happy about and advocated for. So there's really great things that do come out from Senator Jerry Moran. And this one's called the Restore VA Accountability Act. So this one would amend Title 38 of the United States Code. It's a statute, federal regulations on what actually dictates what the VA does is everything's under 38. And it is to provide disciplinary procedures for supervisors and managers at the Department of Veterans Affairs and to modify the procedures, personnel actions against employees of the department and for other purposes. Sounds great, right? So there's been in the last 6-8 years, because this also something similar was passed in the Trump's first administration, that to pretty much beef up the disciplinary actions towards VA employees. And that act actually had caused some issues because after that act was passed, a series of federal employees by the VA were fired. But then those employees filed lawsuits and actually won. They either got their jobs back, got back pay, what have you. Because the courts found that the act that was passed wasn't actually, right. It wasn't lawful. And it also had been very vague in certain areas. And that's one thing that I'm pointing out, that I'm giving you a little bit more context, because this bill kind of reminds me of that one. So they're trying to fix what they had before, trying to reinstate it. And one of the things in here that let me find it. Okay, here we go. And it's very quick. It's in the general, the secretary may remove from civil service, demote, or suspend a covered individual who is an employee of the department if the secretary determines by substantial evidence that the performance or misconduct of the covered individual warrants such action. Now, the thing is that that's still vague. Substantial evidence. That can cause some issues, because who's to say that substantial evidence means one write-up, one disciplinary action, one thing, and then you're demoted? That can cause some issues. There's some other things in here, and it says, let's see. But it's in here, the covered individual subject to action is entitled to an advance notice of the action in a file containing all evidence in support of the proposed action. That clarifies things from the last act that came before, because it was still very vague. Be represented by an attorney or other representative of the covered individual's choice, and grieve in the action in accordance with internal grievance process that the secretary, in consultation to the assistant secretary for accountability and whistleblower protection, shall establish purposes for the subsection. That one also is updating from the previous act that was passed during the Trump administration. So this is something that they're trying to fix and try to see if they can get better at disciplining and also letting go federal employees under the VA that may not be doing their job. So we'll see how this one goes through. It's very possible this one will be processed in this congressional session. Things that Senator Moran spend time on tends to have a higher likelihood of passing and gets pushed through. I mean, he runs the committee, so those are very big likelihoods added into here. So I do encourage you to look this up if you guys are interested. Senate Bill 124. This will likely come up for review in a committee hearing in the next couple of months, and they'll be talking about it. I'll probably be bringing it up again, depending on how that goes, and we'll see how that one would work out. The next bill is called House Bill HR 71, Veterans Healthcare Freedom Act. This one was introduced by Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, Republican, by the way. And this bill is to direct the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to carry out a pilot program to improve the ability of veterans to access medical care in medical facilities of the Department of Veterans Affairs and in the community by providing the veterans the ability to choose healthcare providers. This one is quite interesting because a lot of things that the veterans do have an issue with is that they have zero choice on who their primary care doctor is. They often, when they go and sign up for a VA hospital or a clinic, what have you, they're automatically assigned. Typically, who's the first available is what happens a lot of times. Sometimes you can try to talk to the people at the desk and see if you can ask for a preference, but it can be complicated at times on how that goes. This one can give a little bit more freedom and a little bit more agency towards the veterans, so they can feel a little bit safer or at least more in power of what goes on with their healthcare by choosing their actual primary care doctor, their healthcare providers. I do know a few clinics that do allow this, that you can choose. The Bay Pines VA outside of St. Pete for their mental health clinic. I've gone there and they've asked, hey, which psychiatrist do you want? Which psychologist do you want? Do you have a preference? And honestly, I usually just went for the first available for those times too, but they will ask. And I have told other veterans, at least for my what doctors I have had, and just say, hey, ask for these guys if you because these guys are good. Sometimes you can get to that, but that's not promised. And on but if this pilot program goes through, it could increase the morale and the satisfaction in the VA healthcare, and also probably win some veterans back on trying to get in for more care with them, because that gives them a little bit more agency in themselves. So this one could really help out a lot, and hopefully lead them for more, improved mental health and other things. This can also give the VA a little bit of insight of the performance of the doctors. Because if the doctors are more highly recommended or they're highly requested, and then the others that are not, can give them more of an idea of the performance of the doctors, which could then maybe help with the other bill that I just discussed. So we'll see how that one goes through. That one might be difficult to work through. There isn't a whole lot of information out there, at least. It's a pilot program, so they usually leave this pretty vague. So then if the VA can handle it, they can do what they can with it. With this, it says the secretary shall select a minimum of 4 regions for the VA to carry this pilot program out. And then they also stipulated that this shall include both rural and urban areas. That's good, because that helps work out how that will go, because there is a lot of veterans that do live in rural areas. Let's see. And then it does work out a little bit of information on removal from certain requirements to access care, going from one to the other, and the coordination. So it might give some, it might have a higher rate of improvement, but we'll just see, because it's something new and things do take a while, especially with the government when it's a pilot program. I mean, if anybody remembers, CommuniCare started as choice, and in the beginning, choice was quite interesting and chaotic and a little bit difficult to handle and work through. So you didn't know who to call, how to work it out. Sometimes it actually seemed like it was longer than it would take longer to get somebody outside the VA than actually in the VA. It was pretty wild. So sometimes the pilot programs can be interesting on working out, and it can take a little bit. But after the grace period, this could be something that would be quite interesting and really help out a lot of veterans. So I'm excited for that bill. Cross my fingers. I'm really happy that Representative Andy Biggs actually had submitted this one, because it's a quite interesting one. The next one is HR House Bill 149, and it's Lead by Example Act of 2025. This is something that has been submitted for a couple of different congressional sessions, and I kind of like this one. It's submitted by Representative Warren Davidson of Ohio, and basically it ensures that the members of Congress and congressional staff receive health care from the Department of Veterans Affairs instead of under the Federal Health Benefits Program or health care exchanges. So basically, it's trying to say, hey, you guys want to make sure that the VA runs smoothly. Well, you're going to have to be receiving care under them as well. So it's a quite interesting stipulation in there. It's kind of like how when the government shut down and certain employees are not paid, congressional people will not be paid as well. That thought process in there. This is where this is coming out. But it has been submitted for a couple of different congressional sessions. Not sure about the likelihood of this one actually coming to pass, because that's a lot of employees in the DC area that would have to be then included on the VA. And it can cause a lot of confusion that they would have to be admitted, especially if they're not veterans, having to get VA care. It can cause some interesting situations in there, and I'm not sure how that would work out. But it's an interesting bill by principle that some people like to say it's the principle of the thing. This one is one of those. So I wanted to introduce you guys to that bill. The next one is the Veterans Collaboration Act, House Bill 552. And this one is actually quite interesting. It's a direction to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to carry out a pilot program to promote and encourage collaboration between the Department of Veterans Affairs and nonprofit organizations and institutions of higher learning that provide administrative assistance to veterans. It sounds pretty good. I mean, it was interesting. It was introduced by Representative Robert Whitman of Virginia. And this one can actually encourage some really great partnerships that can help out the veteran population on administrative actions. I see a lot of times that veterans need assistance with legal, housing, crime if they run into issues, civil. I mean, I also, VA disability compensation and those type of things. This could help them with other things like that with higher learning. Programs can basically collaborate with nonprofits and help them over with these areas and try to see whether helping the veterans out can improve their lives, because there are people in these organizations in higher learning areas that need subjects, basically clients and customers, to practice, to learn. There is a student law center with Harvard that they actually work with veteran service organizations to do studies and do cases for them for a lot of veterans. So this could be something that could be quite interesting and help a lot of people out. And so this one we'll see. That one would be really nice. So if you guys like the idea of that and see if veterans, see if you could see, if you know many people that would benefit from that, look up Veteran Bill 552, Veterans Collaboration Act. And that can be really good. I'm sure Representative Robert Whitman would love some support on that one. Okay, so there's another one. It is House Bill 220, Veterans Infertility Treatment Act of 2025. Okay, this was submitted by Representative Julia Brownlee from California. She is a longstanding member of the VA committee as well in the House, known for a lot of advocacy for women veterans. And what this one is, of course, the focus is also on women veterans because they do have a higher likelihood of infertility, but this includes male veterans as well. The thing is that the VA will only provide infertility treatment services if the veteran has a direct service connection to what causes their infertility. So, i.e. ovarian cancer, that was connected from the PACT Act, then you could possibly get IVF or infertility treatments. If a male soldier had an injury down there, which decreased the likelihood of sperm, that could be it. Or he can't produce it at all. That is also something that the VA will cover. But if a veteran has something else that is not a direct service connection and drawing basically have at least a 0% disability rating, they do not actually receive any infertility treatment services. So there are a lot of veterans, the older they get, other conditions happen. There's also, for a lot of people, they have conditions that are misdiagnosed or undiagnosed for years, like endometriosis. Women go undiagnosed for that for many years. I went 17 years without being diagnosed for endometriosis, and I didn't get diagnosed while I was active duty. So that I do not have a VA disability for. Going back to trying to get that fought for would be very difficult. You would have to prove that you had it during that time frame. And even then, a lot of people are like, well, then you were probably predisposed. The military did not actually how did the military actually hinder it? Because if you have a predisposition or you had a condition prior to the military, an existing condition, the VA will only give you or service connect it if you showed proof that the military aggravated it. So it's one of those things and a lot of technicalities that can cause a lot of issues, and it can be really frustrating for a lot of people. So this bill would basically provide coverage for infertility treatments and standard fertility preservation services for all veterans that have them, which could be really great because if a veteran, they just get out of the military, they only served 3 to 6 years, they don't know what's really going to happen to them. They may develop ovarian cancer later. They can just get some eggs frozen, and then the VA will cover that, hold that for a while, and then they can use that later. That stuff can be really easy for veterans to have accessible because that stuff is very expensive. And then if anyone has seen any of the legal stuff in the news that's happened in the South and the States on IVF and with the freezing the eggs, it can cause a lot of confusing legal mess. So this can be something that could be actually one less thing for veterans to take off their minds and have to handle. So this one could be really good for a lot of veterans out there. So if those that know anyone that is interested in getting infertility treatments and they cannot get that through the VA, let them know about this bill, House Bill 220. They can contact Representative Julia Brownlee to see how they can support. You can contact her no matter the fact that you're not in her district. Representatives that introduce bills like this want to know people that will be directly impacted on these bills so that they know what to tell the other people to vote for this bill, to sponsor this bill, so then they can get it passed. So these type of things, these stories would be really great for these representatives and senators to actually get their legislation passed. Because again, between 4 and 8% of all legislation introduced is passed. That's it. Okay, the next bill to talk about is House Bill 72, TBI and PTSD Treatment Act. This one has been submitted at least every congressional session since I've been watching and reading all of these congressional bills. This one was introduced by Representative Andy Biggs. He has introduced it a couple of times before, I believe. And this one would actually direct the VA secretary to furnish hyperbaric oxygen therapy for veterans with traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder. One of the things that I know that is a difficult thing about this bill is that the FDA has yet to approve those treatments to those conditions. So this is something that has been holding this bill back from being passed because of the lack of the FDA approval on this. So definitely try, if you have ever tried this treatment and it has worked for you, please contact Representative Andy Biggs, because I'm sure he would love some help on this. And hopefully, because then Secretary RFK Jr. can really help that out with the FDA and try to get those things worked on and see if there could be more studies to try to see if they can actually cause or actually find an improvement on treatment between these conditions and that treatment. So the next bill to talk about is it's House Bill 71, Veterans Healthcare Freedom Act. This is a good one. This one will actually direct the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to carry out a pilot program to improve the ability of veterans to access medical care in medical facilities of the Department of Veterans Affairs and the community by providing veterans the ability. Excuse me, I already read this one. Oh my goodness. I apologize. I love that one so much I had to read it twice, right? Okay. The next one is House Bill 452, Safe Basis Act of 2025. This one has been talked about for, this subject has been talked about for a while. It's to direct the Secretary of Defense to establish the authority to issue permits to certain members of the armed forces who seek to carry concealed firearms while on military installations. Now, this has been come up quite a few times, and then usually right around when there is an active shooter in or around a military base. And so this one has come up before. I do know that certain people do have access to getting concealed carry permits. Typically those, like I know for my Army Reserve background, there have been reserve members from my unit who were full-time police officers in the local area, and they were able to get the concealed carry permits approved through the base security so they can carry their weapons, off duty. And I mean, a lot of times we have, they have to come into the reserve center during the week, sometimes when they're working, and they've had to lock in their weapon and had to do, and it can be a really complicated mess. So having the ability to get on base when they have their concealed carry permit would be really great. I'm someone that does concealed carry at times, so this one will be really interesting and really great. There is quite a few people I do know that are veterans in the military that feel better when they do concealed carry. Because when I worked on a military base while I was a reservist and also a federal employee, it can be really disconcerting to not be carrying a weapon after you've carried a weapon for so long. And so you have that sense of security about yourself. And I've also been around an attempt active shooters. So it can be really scary at times. Thank goodness we had MPs fairly close because my reserve center was very close to the gate. So the security was right there. So those type of situations can help, but then it can also hurt. So it's what you can see and what could also help. Well, It's something that could actually help a lot of people in with morale, security, sense of security. So that's House Bill 454, Safe Bases Act. So one quick one I want to squeeze.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined in this episode by my good colleague and partner here, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. We recently came back from a trip to Ukraine. We will mention that. I think it'll be of some interest to the audience, our experiences of being there and the many conversations we had. But also it's been an absolutely momentous week where the fire hose of Russian disinformation, which we're used to tackling from the mouths of propagandists, we're now hearing these same narratives repeated and amplified throughout the Republican Party. We're hearing it in the mouths of various libertarians, podcasters. We're hearing it in the mouths of the Vice President and President of the US, as well as Elon Musk and others. Jonathan, welcome.
Well, I'd like to say I'm not just a colleague, and I do class you as a friend as well, Jonathan. But yes, no, it is an absolutely. It has been an incredible week, and it continues to be an incredible week. I like yourself. I'm a YouTuber. I do very much current news every day. All my content is kind of topical. It's not evergreen. And what I'm finding at the moment is I'm having to record more and more content, more and more videos, because everything is happening all at once. And it is not just about the war in Ukraine. It's about the future of the security architecture of the world, of the relationships between the superpowers. You could say a new age of empires between, the EU, Russia, China, BRICS, and the United States, and the rapid change that the United States has experienced over the past month has been, I think, unprecedented. So yeah, it's just incredible.
And like you, I tend to write little scripts for some of my episodes that I put out. I'm having to sort of tear them up, rewrite them, replan episodes on the fly. It's almost impossible to predict what's going to come up, what we're going to need to report on. But I think the most disturbing part is hearing not just these propaganda narratives being repeated, but starting to understand or try to understand where they're coming from. Because I don't think it's true that everyone that's repeating these narratives is necessarily a Russian shill or is necessarily being paid to do this. There are people, and I hear this directly from people who have connections with the GOP, who have connections with Mar-a-Lago. There are many, many people exposed to these narratives who genuinely believe them. And that is the most troubling aspect about it. Let's list some of them. The allegation that Zelensky is a dictator, which he's not. The allegation that billions upon billions, if not hundreds of billions of funds have disappeared. They haven't. The allegation that is embedded in the minerals deal that somehow Zelensky has extorted from the US $500 billion. Actually, it's only $100 billion of aid that's been provided to Ukraine. That was never expected to be repaid. And it wasn't provided in cash. They didn't have huge mattresses stuffed with cash being sent over to Zelensky's palace. Most of this was in military aid that was provided in terms of hardware. And there are very good, in fact, probably unique in the history of warfare, systems to track end-to-end the delivery and deployment of the equipment that's being donated. What's your impression, though? How are these narratives being injected into the American political sphere?
I'll add one narrative as well, which is it's the fault of NATO expansionism that the war began, and we've heard this from so many different sources, and interestingly, not originally from Putin, who, if you look at his 2020 essay, he didn't mention that. It was all about the kind of the nature of the country, I would argue the empire of the Russian Federation, and that it kind of necessarily includes Ukraine, etc., etc. And there was very little talk from Putin himself about NATO expansionism as underwriting, what would be a future war in Ukraine. Now, we have heard Mike Walls, the national security advisor, spout on, and I say spout, and I mean that because I feel strongly about this. He's spouting that on national television again today, I think it was, and that is a Russian talking point. Now, if that's coming from the security advisor to the United States, who is involved directly in the negotiations with the Russians, and he is regurgitating a Russian talking point, we've got problems here, right? Ukraine has problems. So when you ask where it's coming from and how is it injecting, it has injected itself right into the very center. You can talk about Trump, you can talk about his national security advisor, you can talk about Marco Rubio. I'm fascinated in this. There's a very, very, very good Politico article that has just come out within the last, I think, 24, 48 hours. The Politico article is titled "MAGA Takes Aim at the Republican Hawks." And what this talks to is something I have been discussing a lot recently, Jonathan, which is there is a tension within the White House. And the tension is between what you could say are the hawks, and I don't mean this pejoratively, I actually mean this in a way that's, people who are hawkish for Ukraine, and that's good and proper and right. People like General Keith Kellogg, the envoy to Ukraine, but maybe on a slightly larger concentric circle, you might include Marco Rubio and Mike Walls, but they are somewhat compromised, I think, at the moment. And then you've got the other, I think, sphere over here, which is Donald Trump, but it's really the people around him, because I don't think Donald Trump is particularly ideologically driven. I think he's quite empty, and he gets filled very easily by people around him. And the people around him are the Project 2025 Heritage Foundation people like Stephen Miller, you could even say adjacent people like Tucker Carlson, his own son, Donald Trump Jr. You've got all these people, JD Vance, all these, and Elon Musk, all these people around Donald Trump are very, very anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia and isolationist. They are in tension with the pro-Ukrainian people. And I think now you've really only got General Keith Kellogg left, and he is being sidelined. And the quote that, and I'll leave you with this, Jonathan, the quote from the article that I think is really pertinent, and this comes from Brad Bowman, a longtime GOP staffer, who said, "We're in the midst of a fight for the soul of the Republican Party generally, and especially on foreign policy." And the article goes through this tension between these two, but the ones that are winning at the moment are the Project 2025 MAGA people. And you might find Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz towing the party line, because they know if they don't toe the party line, they will lose their jobs. Marco Rubio will be replaced by Rick Grenell, who is another one of these people. And I think we're at a stage in Europe where we have to wonder whether, essentially we're cutting the US loose in terms of support for Ukraine.
Well, we're on various sort of groups, and that's a big discussion point at the moment. And of course, a lot of the oxygen is taken up by people in the US who are still convinced that you can inject good information into Trump's inner circle to counteract the bad information, that assumes that all the decisions being made are based on bad information. But I rather suspect we also have bad intent. When it comes to Tucker Carlson, he is, I think, smart enough to know the reality. Actually, he may not be interested in the reality. He's smart enough to be able to tell it and understand that Putin is a dictator. So I suspect he's made a very conscious decision to craft this particular reality and to become the face of it, and indeed to inject his humor and all his articulation into it, if that thing appeals to you. It doesn't really appeal to me. I find it repulsive, but I know some people do find him entertaining. But this is one of the challenges here, because if we focus all our efforts on trying to change Trump's inner circle without realizing that actually there's a high degree of bad intent behind some of the people amplifying these narratives, then that's not going to succeed. Do you think our focus should now shift to persuading those in Europe who see more clearly what's going on, that it's time for Europe to step up, rearm, and protect Ukraine? Because if Ukraine falls and Europe's abandoned, then within a few years, it'll be Europe's turn to feel the brunt of Putin's war machine.
Yeah, and just going back to your previous point, I saw one commenter today say, what it explains you can either say Trump or the Trump administration's approach on doing this volte-face, this 180 shift on Ukraine. Is it, one, he's badly informed, badly advised; two, that he's actually, the person said mad, I would say ignorance. And I don't mean that, again, pejoratively. I mean, he literally just doesn't know enough about the Ukraine war, about Ukraine, Russia, the history, the geopolitics. So, is he badly advised, ignorant, or compromised? And I think it's all three, and that there are arguments to say at the moment that are really coming out an awful lot that Donald Trump himself is compromised. There are theories that he was in 1987 recruited, his codename is Krasnov, etc., etc. There's a lot of data to support that. I don't think it's kind of conspiracy theory thinking. I actually think there's some really good evidence to suggest that Donald Trump himself is compromised. But going back to someone like Tucker Carlson, his father is a board member on a lobbying organization that lobbies for Viktor Orban. So Tucker Carlson, who is also intimately engaged with the Heritage Foundation, who have some of their funding from the Bethany Foundation and the Danube Institute, who are both based in Hungary, who get their money from the Orban administration, who gets the money from Moscow, and you can follow the money from Moscow through to Hungary and Budapest, through to Heritage Foundation, and the Heritage Foundation are responsible for creating Project 2025, and Project 2025 is the 900-page document that is a blueprint for the present Trump administration's work and policy and their administration, right? Okay, so actually there is very much compromise, I think, throughout the administration, and that is a challenge. But I have digressed. I mean, your question was, do we then just cut loose of this issue from a European point of view and say, right, we need to concentrate on European unity? And I would say yes. I think we need to try and do everything, of course, try and convince people who are convincible, but we definitely need Europe to unite. And there's an interesting question about, well, what's the UK's position here? Keir Starmer's meeting Donald Trump on Thursday in the White House. Is he someone who is going to play a pivotal role? Because actually you could see the UK come closer to Europe, maybe rejoin in some sense, get some closer working partnership with the EU, but certainly on security, and eschew maybe the US and the dependence on the US for security and defense.
That brings us, of course, to the German election. Well, there's two things. So before we get to the German election, which we'll probably end on, because that could be a pivotal moment, and we'll talk about 300 billion in Russian assets and that kind of stuff. But let's just touch upon this article that's come out in Byline Times, where it says that Trump has a KGB code name and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. I definitely don't dispute with you that it's entirely feasible that Trump was recruited. I think it's almost 100% certain that the KGB would have tried to recruit him on his many trips to the Soviet Union and Russia, because that's what they did. any influential business person, any influential celebrity, any academic even, or person that looked like they might be some kind of rising star in whatever sphere, the KGB were all over it like a fly on, the proverbial. I've seen that at work as well. As a humble student, I've absolutely seen this KGB technique to invest in people. And this was in the 90s when we were supposed to be at peace with Russia. But it's certainly the case that I think he would have been approached. It may be that some form of transactional relationship was created with him. It may be that it goes far further. But the way this information is being leaked out makes me think very much of the Steele dossier. And there are some people that think that these are sort of seasoned Kremlin watchers, such as David Satter, that actually think that the Steele dossier and this new piece of information is a piece of Russian spycraft. It's designed to cover up that Trump was a KGB agent by releasing the news preemptively, but in a really clunky way and via a source that's quite questionable and has been known to, amplify conspiracies and all sorts of stuff. So this could be a clever piece of tradecraft. Also, if you release it in a way that is, I would say, quasi-plausible, what you actually achieve is what the Steele dossier achieved, and that is a complete weaponization of the information space. You have people like Rachel Maddow and others running around screaming, this is a Russian plot, Trump's a Russian agent, blah, blah, blah. And yet some people in MAGA will look at this and go, actually, this is a barely plausible accusation. Not that it couldn't be true, but this particular piece of evidence you're showing us is really quite poorly constructed. It's a great way to re-weaponize the information sphere.
I'd be careful about using terms like agent. It may be far less formal than that. I mean, just a couple of data points that I think are really, really important, and they're in the public space, right? In 1987, after Trump visited Moscow for the first time, as a real estate mogul who's never commented on foreign policy at all prior to that, he comes back from visiting Moscow, and a week or so later, he spends $130,000 taking out advertisements in newspapers to slag off NATO and ask why countries are funding, are paying towards NATO, etc., etc. Like, I don't understand why any human being who's a real estate mogul would do that unless they've got ulterior motives, right? And they've just been to Moscow, they come back and they spend $130,000 on full page ads slagging off NATO. So that's weird. 2008, Donald Trump, I think when he was very close to being bankrupt, sold a mansion, and he sold a mansion to a chap called Dmitry Ryablovlev, who I think was involved in Riyadh in the negotiations. So interesting connection there. He sold that mansion, as far as I'm aware, for $95 million to the Russian, and that was 2.32 times the value of the mansion. So why in 2008 would Donald Trump, why would a Russian buy a mansion for vastly more than the mansion was worth, unless that's a way to get money to Donald Trump at a time when he really desperately needed it? So there are these, and that's just two data points. I mean, you can go and read, there's an amazing article in Medium by Zarina Zabriskie called Trump's Early Contacts with Russia. It's a 37-minute article. So this is a big bit of investigative journalism that looks at all of the connections. So I don't know whether agent's the right word, but I would say Donald Trump is probably compromised, because something has to explain why he and his administration have done a 180 shift. Now, part of that will be the Project 2025 that I think themselves are compromised because Heritage Foundation are compromised. And you can also tell that because Heritage Foundation did a 180 switch from the beginning of the war when they deeply supported Ukraine. And then just a few months into that, the guy in charge of, was it not Jason Roberts, what's the name? Anyway, the chap in charge of Heritage, they did a 180 switch on Ukraine as well. And so these are compromised entities. How they're compromised, whether you call them agents or whatever, is semantics, but there is a problem there.
This further talks to the idea that actually this strategy of trying to inject good information into that into the Trump camp is actually, you're on a hiding to nothing. So let's turn back to Europe, and of course, Schultz has got
that's a really important point though you make, because I think you're not going to convince Trump. So Starmer and Macron are going to go to the White House, and I've been wondering what their approach should be. And I think you're right. Like, I don't think they're going to convince Trump to change his mind. So they might as well go to the White House and actually offer threats, and actually just be really robust and say, look, if you don't play game, we in Europe have some leverage, and we have leverage that's economic, and economics will hurt you in the pocketbook. It will hurt American citizens, and that will hurt you in the polls, and that talks to Trump.
It's a possibility. There's also Poland. I think the Polish vote helped to get certain constituencies over the line for Trump, and Duda has maybe a close relationship with Trump.
But did you not hear about him?
Yeah, but he was slighted. He was slighted, wasn't he?
He waited an hour and a half outside the door of Trump's Oval Office, and Trump saw him for 10 minutes, and that's gone down as a humiliation in Poland.
Yes, I think, people are trying to explain it away, but it's the kind of behavior that Putin operates, keeping people waiting. Certainly when Putin was at the height of his power, he'd keep people waiting for hours, sometimes in just such a manner. So that this is dictator 101. No, we've got the sort of 10 minutes sort of left here, and I think if it's pivoting towards Europe, and if Europe's security really needs to be handled by Europe, there are a number of problems, aren't there? Well, first of all, we've got a bit of good news, and that is it looks like Merz has won in Germany, but he's going to have to form some kind of mega coalition, which may well weaken his ability to act. But certainly some of the things he's saying are extraordinarily robust. He's talking about Germany taking a lead for a new European security architecture and removing dependency on the US. And he's making all the right noises. So that's encouraging. And of course, for a long time, he said that Taurus will be provided to Ukraine. On the downside, there are these not even rumors. I mean, this is how fast things are moving. I did an episode just at the end of last week saying what we should expect in the coming months. And one of these things would be Musk potentially withdrawing support for Starlink in Ukraine, the US potentially withdrawing military aid support for Ukraine, and then threatening European allies. It only took 2 or 3 days before this speculation to actually be firmed up, and noises along those lines to be made. I hope that Musk isn't watching and getting ideas from my episodes. So I'm a little bit paranoid about that now. But things are moving very fast in the wrong direction. And of course, what we ignore is a worst case. So many European militaries have American weaponry, which they've purchased, which they have the right to operate, etc., as a key part of their military strategy. The US possesses a kill switch in every piece of sophisticated equipment, which could potentially render it inoperable. How fast does Europe need to react in order to try and plug these gaps? And we accept as well that some of the gaps in US provided equipment just cannot be fulfilled by Europe because we do not have that resource, that tech.
Well, it's interesting. We heard from Zelensky today that lots of statements on Starlink, and apparently that wasn't an issue, but they are making contingencies anyway, and they also have alternatives from the Swedes and Germans, etc., etc. But I think that would have lost Musk a lot of money, and if he had switched off, if the US had switched off Starlink, and I think that's probably what was going on there. But anyway, we heard that Zelensky's also they're creating a Patriot analog in Ukraine, but of course that's going to be probably a long way down the line. What the US I think might realize is that, and I talked about this months and months and months ago, when the US were making sounds about pushing Europe away, and when there's all this talk even before Trump won the election. He was talking about Europe need to stand on their own 2 feet. They need to own this war. They need to pay more, even though Europe had already at that point paid more than the US towards Ukraine. The more you push the Europe away, and this isn't a kind of like, this is a gray area because there are pros and cons on both sides for both sides, right? The more you push the Europe away, the more Europe stands on its own 2 feet. And it's written a defense strategy that says going forward, we want to procure 60% of our own equipment from within the EU, right? So you push them away, they stand on their own 2 feet, they do pay for more stuff, but that payment will just stay within Europe and they will stop buying so much stuff from the US. This will hurt the military industrial complex in the US, and that will hurt jobs, the economy, etc., etc. The more that the US recedes, the more power they give to other people to also become more independent from the US. Also, because the US is now seen as an unreliable ally. And if you're an unreliable ally, you don't want to be buying stuff from them where they can hold, as you just intimated, they can hold the key to that equipment being used, etc., etc. So you're going to want to be more self-sufficient. So the EU, but not only the EU, you can probably see Japan, Australia, other people going, do we buy stuff from the US or do we create our own, or do we look to Europe that will probably be more consistent, reliable ally, because actually they're a large bloc and it's very difficult for them to swing from one extreme to the other, where a two-party polarized political system can. So you've got 4-year election cycles in the US, which means that they are inherently, at the moment, because they're so polarized, inherently less stable. And that will not favor the economy, the military industrial complex in the US. So yeah, Europe needs to step up, do more, pay more, move quickly, but it's not looking good for the US, I think, from their military industrial complex point of view.
And this is where I think we have to sort of draw some attention to it, because much of the criticism of Trump, many of the efforts to try and persuade him to change, etc., are still based on the presumption that he thinks and acts in an economically rational way. Now, we've long given up looking at Putin in that way because we know that's not the mechanic of the regime. The mechanic of his regime is for him to survive and keep his ill-gotten gains. And it doesn't matter how he hurts his people or his national interest, he will do that. But we're still critiquing Trump as if he was an economically rational actor. Well, if he's not, and many of his actions indicate that he's operating in the interests of Russia and not in the interests of the US, then this whole framework of critique that we adopt against Trump is woefully inadequate to the task.
I would add to, because I see Trump as incredibly transactionalist. It's not that he may be working in ways that benefit Russia or China or this or that, that he's compromised in that way. But I think he's compromised as far as kind of a long-term US strategy would see it. He's compromised by his own transactionalism, and he's so short-term in his thinking, as in, like, you can see this in the negotiations with Russia and Ukraine, or wanting Ukraine to sign this minerals deal, where he's just extorting Ukraine. He's seeing, right, I see this war as a way where the US can gain. Now, I've come in, we spent all this money, we're going to try and recoup that money, and then we're going to get some material benefit through mining contracts and gas and nuclear, etc., etc. Rather than understanding things. So it's really simplistic, like zero-sum game thinking, your loss is our gain, etc., etc. Whereas otherwise, long-term thinking governments are going to go, right, we need to stay at the top of the hegemonic ladder as a US, so we need to invest in our foreign policy to keep our power up there and make sure that the dollar is used as the international currency and reserve currency around the world. And, we're doing all these things because we're playing a really long game of 4D chess. And Trump is not a long-term 4D chess player. He's let's go in and throw over all the chess pieces and then disrupt and try and get some short-term gains. But short-term gains don't necessarily work very well for long-term strategies.
I think we're kicking into the final music now as we wind it up. Well, we covered Germany. I think in the next episode, well, who knows what we'll cover in a month's time, because things are moving so incredibly fast. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. Any last words for the audience there?
It's a crazy time at the moment. Stay abreast of what's going on with a variety of sources. Don't rely just on one source, of course, but question everything, particularly yourselves. You are the easiest person to fool, as the physicist Richard Feynman once said, and we need to make sure that we're getting accurate information, garbage in, garbage out. We make good decisions with good information.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.